I tried finding the Bell and Williams video from the prior to the arrest, and I was unable to find it. So.
I was devastated. I couldn't believe it. And then it hurt even worse because my co-defendant was found not guilty. And it also kind of
because your co-defendant got off, so you
reminded me, like, you know, they really wanted me, and they mentioned that because of my platform. They mentioned the amount of people.
Yeah, that's why they want you. You're an influencer.
That had watched my videos.
They don't want you to influence other people doing what you've done.
They made that very clear. And so when they did
your
that,
pro-life videos,
yeah,
and your gospel videos of sharing your faith,
right?
You were already making inroads on social media. People knew about what you were doing.
Right.
They wanted to make an example of it.
I am still not able to find any of these.
Yeah. And
all these are new interviews after the fact.
And it hurts so bad.
What was it like the day that you turned yourself in and you're leaving behind your husband and your 2-year-old daughter, Ellie?
So that morning, I get up and we had put in a bail appeal, hoping that the judge would allow me to fight my case from the outside. She denied it. I was hoping. Even though she had sentenced me that.
Yo, Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. Good to see you.
I was still hoping that she wasn't that cruel. But I should have known better, because when she sentenced me for 41 months, I'll tell you the things she said. I think that's a better guide for you to understand how I felt turning myself to the prison. During sentencing, she said, you know, oh, you have so many followers, so many supporters, so your 2-year-old will be fine. She don't need you. She'll be good. And then she said, oh, you're young. You'll get through this. You'll get past this. 41 months. It was like, what? But I still had some hope. I was like, I don't know. Maybe I was stupid, but I just did. So when I found out she denied the bail appeal, I said, okay. Time to turn myself in. My husband told me that morning that she denied it.
And I gotta interrupt here for just a second. To deny your bail appeal, they put everyone on bail.
Right.
I mean, there's endless stories of criminals with all kinds of track records, you know.
She went around for an additional 4 years, right? After they put the injunction out. Went around for an additional 4 years doing exactly the thing that she was originally charged and later convicted for, right? So they gave her an opportunity to stop, like, what she was doing, and she kept doing it. So they're like, no, we're not letting you out to keep doing it because you've already proved that you can't get the hit, right?
And they're on bail, and then they're out in the public, and then, you know, they do often recommit. You're not out there with this long list of assaults or this or that. You're out there literally preaching the gospel, helping people who are homeless. Right. You know, this is one thing that they...
I don't know that. I don't know that this is not her first time assaulting somebody. I would actually assume that it's not.
You on in your post-conversion life doing all of this service work, so you were not a risk to anyone.
Right.
But they had to make an example of you. They wanted to put you in
prison. Let me tell you how bad it was. She said I was a flight risk and denied my bail appeal because I'm a flight risk. Mind you, she told me to self-surrender.
Because you've been traveling all over the country after you were already to do the thing that the court ruled that you needed to stop doing.
1-month sentence. On top of that, the whole time that I was fighting my case, I was on pretrial, which meant that I had to be on a $30,000 bail. My passport was taken from me. I could not leave the Southern District of Tennessee without permission from a probation officer, even though I was not yet found guilty. I had to correspond with the officer of the court just to go to Memphis or Nashville 2 hours away. Even to go to Atlanta, I had to call and ask permission for 2 years
Oh my gosh! And do they give you permission?
straight. Never violated one time. Never violated my bail. And so when I had asked for that bail appeal to fight my case out, she then says, no, she's a flight risk and she's trying to procrastinate going to jail.
Working with college students,
Because you
a
did.
good bit of college students would say, you know, that's true for you.
She then
You
says,
dragged the trial out for fucking years.
No, she's a
and kept doing the thing that you were on trial.
flight risk and she's
For
trying
doing.
to procrastinate going to
And there was an injunction against you doing it.
jail. So the judge was not only adamant about me going to jail, she wanted me there. You know? And it's like, do I think she possibly knew that Trump could have won? Yeah. Did she care? No. This judge, I mean, she was ruthless. I mean, there's no other way to express it. This woman was cold-hearted and ruthless, and she was the full display of the administration that was just in office. Because these people are cold-blooded. I mean, there's no questions. So, yeah. But
And she saw the other part, she's seeing your 2-year-old in the courtroom.
oh, she told me I had a beautiful 2-year-old child.
You
She
brought your 2-year-old to court. That was
told me, oh, you have a beautiful daughter. She'll be all right.
classy. Very classy.
What was it like turning yourself in and leaving Ellie and Ricky?
See, they try to do that to get sympathy, just like with everything else. It's like, oh no, be sympathetic to me, not to the people that I've actually done harm to. You know?
I was trying to be strong that morning that it happened because my husband was breaking down bad. He was breaking down really bad. And I mean, I could just
He's like, oh no, I'm gonna get stuck with all these kids by myself.
see his face, his
Should
face
go to
turned
prison.
upside down. The every mile that we got to get into turning me in, it was so hard for him. And he was crying, he was a wreck. And so I was trying to be strong. And unfortunately, like when he was leaving, when him and Ellie was leaving and I sat in the waiting room to process myself into the prison, that's when I broke down crying. And I was just devastated. And I mean, I told you this during makeup, but I'll say it even now. My mind was trying to be at peace, but my body was suffering from trauma. And so I had already gotten off my cycle, right? But I was fine. The day that I turned myself in, my cycle had started again, maybe a week later after getting off my cycle. And I did not get off for 3 weeks. I was on my cycle for 3 weeks straight while I was in prison because my body was literally reacting with so much stress. And
Or it was from being around all those women. So it's like the Wellesley effect.
also knowing
Very-
that the
yeah.
election was coming up, and that meant that decided whether I was going to stay in prison or not. That played a part as well. And so
I was
I
on
also
my cycle because I was waiting to see if Trump was going to get
will
elected.
wake up in shock. Like, I don't know if anybody's ever lost like a parent. Like most people who have, I don't know if you have, but anybody that has ever lost a parent, they would understand this. When you lose a parent, you kind of wake up and you're like, oh my God, in shock. Like, dang, they're really gone. And you'll deal with that for about a good 6 months when you lose a significant other or loved one. That's exactly how I felt waking up in prison for the last 3 months. I literally will wake up in shock. Like, oh my God, I'm really in prison. So my body had suffered so much trauma, yet my mind was trying to stay geared on my faith. And so they were going in two different directions.
What were your thoughts and feelings about Ellie specifically? I mean, this is your daughter. You were always with her. Your mom, and here you are, not knowing what the next day is going to bring and being away from her, where you can't see her, you can't be with her.
Well, the biggest thing was that I was scared she was going to forget me. I thought that she would just forget that I was her mother.
You
And
thought your daughter would just forget
she
you?
would forget like our
Kind
time
of shitty mother, are you?
together. I don't know, maybe it was just a thought in my head.
Yeah, it was probably just a thought in your head. I mean, are you there that much, or are you out like protesting abortion clinics more than you're at home being a mom?
And
Because I think the Bible says you should be at home being a mom.
oh God, it would torment me. Like, oh my God, like I'm not there. Like, is she gonna remember me? And then I'll never forget when Ricky had brought her for visitation. And when she first saw me, she just was jumping.
The YouTube Music app has ad-free playlists just for your ears.
It's been a devastating fire. It might
And,
not be immediately safe for you to go back to the property, but one.
The protesters say at the time of the attack, they were praying when a man began yelling at them regarding their opposing views on abortion rights. We want to advise viewers, some of the video is graphic.
I leaned down, I was hit by a truck. I don't know what happened, but instantly I was looking up at the sky and said, oh, what was that?
According to a witness, the suspect knocked 73-year-old Dick Schaefer out cold. It is believed the young man who did it didn't like Schaefer's anti-abortion message outside of Planned Parenthood in West Baltimore.
Speared the gentleman. He speared one gentleman over that fire pot into the window, knocked him out. He was out cold for several minutes.
Schaefer says he has hand, shoulder, head, and back injuries. He credits fellow protester, 80-year-old Mark Crosby, with saving his life. Both Schaefer and the witness say the suspect repeatedly punched Crosby in the face and stomped on him before leaving the scene. Medical staff at a nearby business treated Crosby until medics arrived.
I went in there, and he was on a gurney. His face was all swollen and bloody, with blood over his clothes.
Schaefer, Crosby, and John Roswell have been demonstrating and praying in shifts outside Planned Parenthood for years. They claim they're often threatened, but this is the first time they were physically assaulted.
I've been spat on by people going by, and then another occasion, he put a satanic curse on me.
A satanic curse? They call these guys sidewalk advocates.
This is the kind of atmosphere we're dealing with.
Planned Parenthood has no control over what happens on the public sidewalk.
Planned Parenthood does not condone any violence, and I think it's unfortunate that there was an incident that occurred outside of our health center.
According to a witness and police who have surveillance footage, the suspect is a 20-something white male wearing a gray T-shirt, blue jeans, brown shoes, brown
They have surveillance footage, but no photo of the
hair,
suspect.
full beard. The witness believes he is about 6 feet tall.
All we're trying to do is approach the women in a loving way and tell them there's help next door and offer them a little gift.
What do you make?
When she first saw me, she just was jumping. She was jumping and she was kicking. She was so happy to see me. I just cried because, like, oh my gosh, she didn't forget me. Because I had not seen her for 2 months straight. Because visitation, they have to approve it before you can get visitors. And so it take a really long time. And so it was like by the grace of God that she was able to come within those 2 months. And so now she remembered me and she just was so happy to see me. And so that's what gave me peace. But yeah, I thought she would forget me.
And it was 2 months before they let you see your daughter.
Yeah.
It's like, I think that's every mom's worst nightmare.
Yeah, they'll go to prison for their own actions and then won't be able to see their kid, right? You shouldn't have broken the law or whatever.
To be separated from your child.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. I being around her it's like I was taken hostage a little bit, if you want to say it that way, because I
No,
never
you weren't taken hostage. You were put in prison
never
for breaking the law.
not been around each other. Like, since she's been born, I'm a stay-at-home mother. I've always been with her. When I travel, she comes with us every morning. I make her breakfast, feed her, get her started with her day and her routine. And just like that, it's over. And I'm just,
Except on the days when I'm protesting an abortion.
she's just got to figure out her life with her dad, and I'm just in prison, figuring out my life in a cell.
What was the hardest thing about those 3 months in prison?
Aside from being away from my family, was just, I guess, the injustice of it. I think a lot of my crying nights was like, wow, this is so unjust. Like, this isn't right, God. Like, this has to be fixed.
This is so unjust.
It's evil.
I crushed a woman's hand in a door. It's so
If
unjust.
they don't like what you stand for, throw you away. It was like they placed me in a social trash can. You know, I was just thrown away because I didn't represent what they wanted me to represent, and I wasn't who they wanted me to be. And I even told them,
It was because you were literally preventing other people's access to healthcare clinics and preventing the staff from getting inside by blocking the doorway.
when she sentenced me, I said, you know, if I was half naked dancing on a stage, you would have sentenced me like this. You would have gave me a slap on the wrist.
There's just no accountability with you. It's just like, what about strippers?
Actually, You're a real criminal. I know people who scammed. I know a woman who stole millions of dollars in PPP loans. She got a year.
What about embezzlers, which, by the way, you yourself were convicted of money laundering, in 2013, right?
If I would have really been a criminal, I would have got a slap on the wrist. But because of my voice and what I stand for, you treat me exactly as what you see me as, a Negro out of line. I don't fit the bill of what you want me to be anymore. I'm not the one that's...
How did you play the race card of an out-of-line Negro? Like, really? Just playing the race card.
Get on stage and twerk so you can get a vote. That's what we work for y'all. But the moment we start to step up and stand for righteousness, now the real numbers come. Now the real sentence come. Now you throw me in the trash can. And that's how I felt.
It's such a powerful point because I think it's true in politics today, especially if you're a minority. Yes. You're not allowed to be pro-life. No. You're not allowed to be conservative. You're seen as a traitor. I mean, that was a big message of the last few years. Right. How dare you be conservative? Right. And your message is for people, of all backgrounds, doesn't matter skin color or anything.
It's because you don't understand what it means to be voting against your own interests, right? You are so brainwashed by the system that you don't understand that you are voting against your own interests. So it's it's really just, a more sophisticated way of people calling you stupid, because you are.
But you're forging a new path saying, no, we're pro-life. Abortion has decimated the Black community, and you're fighting back against that and so much more. Right. And they picked on you for that.
Right. How can you be pro?
That's not even a truism. It's not even a half truism. Like, that's just utter bullshit.
Black, or so you claim to be, but then you separate a Black family. I don't want to brag, but I'd pretty much like to say my family is a pretty pristine family. We're Christian. We're married. My husband is my daughter's father. It's a united family. We believe in God. We're all American.
Prove it. I want a paternity test.
American, born and bred. And you would separate us? You guys talk about separating mothers, illegal immigrants' kids from their mothers all the time. You talk about how pro-Black you are and how you want to be Black Lives Matter for the cop who kills the Black kid. But now I'm a Black woman who's pro-life. And you want to take me from my kid for 3.5 years because you don't like what I stand for? That's what I've been saying the entire time, and I will stand on it. And if anything, it's proven.
No, they're sending you to prison for breaking the law and violating other people's rights. What don't you get about that?
That's the real racism.
Like, it has nothing to do with racism, right? You went beyond the bounds of peaceful protest, and you blocked access to a healthcare facility.
This is the racism I've been talking about because we're not being what they want us to be. They would have preferred me to be a house Negro. To manage them, keep those in line, keep them voting for Kamalas and Bidens and pushing these agendas that are killing the African-American race, these DEI policies that are destroying work ethic in the African-American community and allowing us to only get by the chin of our chin. And now, rather than me be hired...
The chin of our chin? Is that even a saying? What is she talking about?
Work ethic. I'm a tax cut. What? And you're okay with that? No. So the moment a voice like me speaks up, no, I'm talking too much. I'm exposing too much. Put her in a social trash can. Federal prison will do.
What were the other people like you're in federal prison. You're a stay-at-home mom being thrown into federal
pound me in the ass prison
for doing pro-life preaching, basically.
Right.
What were the other inmates like, and how did they see you? How did they perceive you when they found out why you were there for being a preacher?
Right. I will say that.
Now at Verizon Business, every business gets the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus. New customer, loyal customer, every customer. Get the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus on us. Powered by Verizon Business.
Before her name went viral, it became a hashtag for anyone claiming a race or culture they were not born into. Rachel Dolezal says she was living her life as an active member of the Black community. Many within her community saw Rachel as a respected civil rights activist. She was president of the local NAACP chapter and an instructor of Africana Studies at Eastern Washington University with a bachelor's in arts and a master's in fine art from Howard University.
What I want to know is, why can't a white person teach African studies?
Then, in 2015, this childhood photo of a blonde-haired white Rachel was a piece of her unraveling. When it was revealed, she had constructed a life around Black culture. Rachel was fired from her job, forced off community boards. Social media erupted, hundreds of thousands of tweets mocking her, while others were disgusted by her perceived role as a culture vulture. Today, almost 6 years later, Rachel says she is still being punished, unable to find a job in the field she'd been thriving in for years and struggling to provide for her 3 sons. Though she admitted she did not correct some assumptions that she was black, she questions the pound of flesh she's still required to pay for her act.
It's funny because they're like, oh, these are assumptions that she was black. But the title of the video says, after pretending to be black. Yeah. So they're like, totally like, oh yeah, she was pretending to be black. Hey, sure, good to see you.
You know, they respected why I was there. You know, they know your paperwork. You know, when you go to prison, they know why you're there. They can look up your paperwork real quick. And they'll treat you accordingly. And so because they knew that I was there for preaching, they were like, oh, she a woman of God, okay. And so they treated me as such. But I was locked up with all types of people. I mean, I was doing time with people that had 50 years, lifers, 18 years, 20 years, 25 years in for
yeah, that's how prison is.
sex trafficking, child molestation, murder.
I doubt that. In a federal prison?
The women I was locked up with, they got lifetime movie.
That's not how that works.
Stories on their crimes, you know? So it wasn't like I was in there with people that were doing short time like me. I mean, you have little pockets of people that are just in and out, but for the most part, most of the people I was locked up with were doing bids, heavy bids.
What was it like when you found
Yeah, I mean, that's what prisons are for.
out? And how did you find out that you had been pardoned by President Trump and you were going to be freed?
Oh my gosh. So I'm very interested. So it's a Thursday. And in prison, this is the thing. You got to be up by 7:30, bed made, and you got to have your uniform on, and you got to be set ready for inspection because you can get like a incident report on you, and then you'll lose like commissary or something like that. So this particular Thursday was very calm. People were sleeping in. It was just like weird. And so I get up that morning, I go and I put my chair in the TV room. That means I got the TV room for the day. I get back in, I take a shower, I put my grades on, and I just decide, you know what, I'm gonna watch the news. I sit and watch the news, and nothing peculiar. I mean, I'm seeing Trump addressing the World Economic Forum, and then they're talking about ICE and, you know, the immigrants that they're getting rid of in Boston, nothing major. And then next thing you know, breaking news, executive orders to be signed.
Yeah, the people they're rounding up and deporting in Boston, nothing major, but
Again, I'm
What
still
about
not
me?
expecting it to be us. So I see 2 orders go up, and then he mentions
me.
pro-lifers coming out. And then he says, yeah, this is an honor to sign this. They should have never been persecuted. And I was screaming. I was like, oh my God, he's about to sign it. Oh my God, he's about to sign it. And the next thing I know, he signs it. And I'm just screaming through the unit, going crazy. I praise it. God,
And the way they worded it too, the peaceful protester. Like this chick, I cannot like reiterate this enough, right? Like they're not making this shit up. She physically blocked the entrance and pushed the door in against the woman who was trying to open it. So the chick tried to go around her, tried to open the door, and she smashed her hand in the door using her whole body, right, as leverage.
like, Jesus, thank you, Lord. I just couldn't believe it. I called my husband. I'm like, babe, he just signed it. Come get me now. So my husband was on his way. He had found out 20 minutes later after he called me. It's all going on Twitter or social media. So he's packing up the baby. He's packing up everything. And in 4 hours, he was there and waited 3 more hours for me to get released.
There's that video has gone around. It's a viral video of your husband, Ricky, holding Ellie, walking up to you. You're free for the first time. What was that moment like for you?
Oh, God, it was everything. It was everything to see my
You went there for 3 months.
daughter.
Bullshit.
Oh my God, and they didn't even get it in camera. Like when she saw me, she was kicking. She was trying to get out of his arms to get to me. She was so
like a 3-year stretch.
happy to see me. It was everything. It was exhilarating to just sit in a car next to him and like it just look at the road and feel the wind.
Yeah, they didn't go on about the extent of the injuries, but they did say that she was injured.
Just hear the car. Like I hadn't heard a car in 3 months.
Like her hand was smashed in the door
It was amazing. It was like I feel like I'm
by
a
this woman.
whole new person. I feel like I was born again. Like I feel like I was Lazarus when Jesus called Lazarus to come out. Like that's how I feel, like revived. Like I feel like I got a whole new life.
So you didn't see Ellie for 2 months, then you had this visitation, and then you didn't see her again for 20 days. So you were being reunited with after 20 days.
After 20 days.
With your
And it was
2-year-old.
amazing. Oh my God. It was amazing. It's still like, I mean, I love the feeling now because it's like I never left her. And that's what I prayed for, that it wouldn't be hard for her to adjust with mommy being home. And obviously it wasn't. I think I kind of sold myself short a little bit as a mom on that part. But for me, it's just like, I'm back to being myself again. Like while I was in prison, you know, my
While I was in prison, I was like locked up, so I wasn't able to do all
husband
the
is
things that I usually do because you
me.
can't
We're
do that in
one,
prison.
and our daughter is just that representation of both of us. And so I was like sliced in half for these whole 3 months. I was half of me. Now I'm back to being all of Bevelyn again, not just number 364.
Rachel Dolezal joins us now from her home in Tucson, Arizona. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. You know, part of the reason I wanted you on this show is really the punishment of this. You've had the documentary. I first encountered you briefly when I was at the Today Show, and you were there being interviewed. And I want to talk a little bit later about your life now and how it's been affected. But you see these headlines, and since your story, as I said at the beginning of the show, it seems like there's one a month. And it's not just black, white, it's Latino, it's Asian, all these storylines. How do you process it, especially when your name is attached to some of these stories? Out of nowhere, hashtag Rachel Dolezal.
Right. Well, it is really tough, you know, to relive that every day and every week, as you said, whatever the case, if somebody's name comes up attached to what people feel is a problematic identity, then I'm hashtag, and there are memes, you know, Kamala Dolezal, all these kind of things that have been created that come my way, and I'm tagged in. And what I really wish is that people could see me, you know, more for who I am than the what, you know, a mother, an activist, an artist. That's really the who I am. And when it comes to race and identity, I've always identified racially as human, but have found more of a home in Black culture, in the Black community. And that hasn't changed. I mean, I'm still the same person I was in May of 2015. I'm still doing the work. I'm still pressing forward, but it has been really tough for sure. You know, having not had a job for 6 years, I've had to create my own job and find ways to provide for my children through braiding hair, through grant writing to bring funds into marginalized communities and Black-owned businesses and nonprofits, through painting, through doing pep talks on Cameo.com. So it's definitely been a long 6 years, but I really strongly believe that, you know, as a person, you have to just continue to be who you are, and you know, you can't change who you are to you know,
can't change who you are.
But you can change who you are. If she was so concerned about her child, maybe she should have stayed home instead of being in front of the clinic, slamming someone's hand in the door. Yeah. I mean, that was one way. I mean, even if you are peacefully protesting, I mean, that's fine. Do that. But don't block access to said institution, right? Like, do what you're supposed to do, right? But she got off for this, and now she gets to play victim, even though she was the one who crossed the line.
550.
What was the, when you got home and you're with Ellie, you're with Ricky, you're in your own home, have you felt any anger or, you know, emotion about the people that did this to you? And what's your bigger message? Do you have a message about the fact that there was an administration for 4 years that did this to almost 24 pro-life people? Some of them put in jail already. Some of them were pending cases. That they were actively trying to do this to you and to many other people.
Right.
And that this is one of the most powerful political parties in the world.
Right.
And they were running the country for 4 years.
Well, I mean,
Like, okay, so the Democrats were running the country for 4 years. Like, that hasn't been the case, like, every other election since, you know, forever, right? Like, and you're like, oh, they're one of the most powerful political parties in the world. Well, sure. Like, Americans have strong political parties, and both the Republicans and Democrats, clearly, like, they go back and forth. Like, they just demonized the Democrats. And it's funny because Musk is the one now throwing his money around in the Republican Party, right? But it's always been about, like, oligarchy and aristocracy.
As far as anger goes, no. I forgive that judge. I forgive all of the people and what they did. I forgive them. I do have forgiveness in my heart towards them. Nonetheless, forgiveness doesn't take away from consequences. I think we've practiced.
Well, it did for you. You got pardoned by the president, so you have no consequences for your actions, or very little repercussion for your actions.
Grace with that side. And the amount of grace that we've practiced has put us in this position now to where they're willing to separate moms and break up families because they don't.
But you don't care when they do that to, illegal immigrants, right? You support that.
Don't respect our opinion or our faith. What they did to me was they didn't just come after me, they came after God when they came.
Even if those immigrants are Christians, probably, just realistically, they're probably Christian families that are being broken up, right? But you support that, not when it's your family.
To me, they were trying to hurt God. They were trying to hurt any representation of God, the God we serve. And that has to be fixed. I feel like in my forgiveness towards them, it cannot take away from the recompense that has to come for what they have done. I do think.
So now that she's been pardoned for the crime that she actually committed, do you think she needs to be compensated for being prosecuted for the crime that she actually committed?
That this is the perfect season now, through my story, for the pro-life team to kind of really band together and fight back for justice. We cannot let this happen again. We can't just let them get a 4-year break just to plan and plot on how they can hurt us all over again and put us through this again. We have to really put our foot down and get the justice that is deserved, because
maybe you just need to stop blocking people's access to healthcare. That'd be great. We stop feeding Christians to the lions, so LOL. It's funny because in those stories, it's exactly because, yeah, sure, at some point they did feed Jews and Christians to the lions for blaspheming, right? And then it flipped, and then it was the Christians feeding the pagans to the lions. So they both did it.
What they did, it was evil. I'm never going to sit there and act like it was not completely evil and ruthless and callous. And there has to be consequences.
Will you be continuing your At the Well ministry and your prayer at abortion?
But it wasn't ruthless and callous when you smashed that woman's hand in the door? That wasn't ruthless?
And your preaching?
Absolutely. I will say this. When I was in front of those abortion clinics and I was preaching and doing what I was doing, we were dealing with a very peculiar time in our nation. You had BLM, which is a communist militia, rising up. You had Antifa. You had COVID and all.
A communist militia? Is
these
that what
regulations that were, unconstitutional happening. We were dealing with a culture shock in our nation. So when I stood up to raise my voice,
You didn't have any cops sitting on your
And at the core of your story, isn't it in some ways about changing to what you want it to be, whether people agree with it or not? You did.
No, I don't really. I think it's more of a story for anyone who reads my book. You can really see it's a whole life, and it's more of a story of becoming than changing. It's more of a story of finding a home culturally, and it's not one of somehow pretending or faking or changing. It's just becoming. And if I had changed, then there would be this flip-flopping, or maybe I would have somehow scrapped everything under pressure. But this is really just who I am, and so I really believe that if I'm going to continue to live, I have to continue to be who I am in the midst of pressure.
And I looked at your hair in the braids, which was part of the way you made money during this time.
Meeting the culture where the culture was at.
I have been gatekeeping this 40-ounce spill-proof glass tumbler, and it is time that I tell you about it.
I believe the season now is of advocacy. I feel like people are a lot more open-hearted to the issues of life. They're a lot more open-hearted to conservative values than they were before. And so this is the time for people to come and reason together and let's build solutions. When there was a season...
Yeah, they're open-hearted because they have no choice, because you guys are like pushing your weight around. Like figuratively, not literally like you did.
Protesting? Yes, I was willing to protest. But I'm not going to bring old wineskin to a new situation or new wineskin to an old situation. I think it's a new season and a new wineskin. So I'm willing to...
Is that what they meant by that?
To advocate. And I feel like that right now is where I'm at more, you know, especially as a mother and as a wife. But I mean, I'm not going to sit here and just say I'm prioritizing my family over the cause, though my family is important, but I believe that we're shifting into a new season and I'm willing to acclimate to that.
Amazing. Bevelyn, you're a hero. You're my hero. And so many people are just
You're my hero.
Inspired by your courage. And
She's...
You
Oh,
are
God.
strong.
What a fucking...
And giving in to the pressure, I guess, would have been to arrive on this show with straight, hair or something that people did not see as culturally identifying as Black.
I'm in braids right now, and for a practical purpose of advertising what I do to provide for my children, a lot of people that see me at the grocery store or something say, like, who braided your hair? It's like, well, I did it. So
Braids by Rachel. Get 'em.
having been through what you've been through and then to sit here and say you forgive, you have forgiveness in your heart for the people who did this for you. Are there any other words you want to say to the new administration and also to Pro-Life America?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. To the new administration. First of all, to Donald Trump. He's a hero's hero. He didn't have to.
Thank you so much, Donald. He didn't have to pardon me. Of course he did. It's part of his platform.
Williams, who was recently released from federal prison thanks to... Am I finally going back to Target? They are abolishing their DEI programs, but here's what that really means. First, however, we are talking to Bevelyn Williams, who was recently released from federal prison thanks to a pardon by Donald Trump after she was prosecuted by the Biden administration for blocking an entrance to an abortion clinic. She has an amazing testimony. You will be so edified by the reminder that God's eternal plan of redemption is always going off without a hitch, and he is always working.
It's really not that impressive, though, is it? Is it that
through
impressive?
the lives of believers. Without further ado, here is Bevelyn. Bevelyn, thanks so much for taking the time to join us. First, can you just tell us how you're feeling right now?
How do you know when it's time to end a relationship or when to really fight for it to see if there's something there?
I don't think there's a right or...
Bevelyn, thanks so much
She does not look good in this interview.
for taking the time to join us.
She looks like hot garbage.
First, can you just tell us how you're feeling right now?
Oh man, it's a lot of emotions. It's like I'm registering everything like in waves right now. It's like sometimes I just sit like
This is a script. She said exactly the same thing in the last interview. I think that sounds so scripted.
my house and I just be like, oh snap, like I'm really home. Like I'm not in prison anymore. So I'm super joyful, so happy, so at peace, so thankful. But yet I'm like exhausted.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I can't get enough sleep because I didn't realize how much I was in such spiritual warfare, like being in prison. Like prison is a lot goes on in prison spiritually.
Prison ain't no joke.
So I'm exhausted in a sense, and I'm just like I'm still kind of traumatized by the experience in itself. And so it's just like
You've been in prison before. Why does she keep saying that? It's so dramatic for me to do 3 months in prison. I've been in Rikers before, but
Can you tell us more about that, about the spiritual warfare that you saw while you were in prison?
she's got all white women interviewing her. I haven't seen any black interviews. I'm just saying. I mean, it's a truism. I looked. I did not see.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. To the new administration. First of all, to Donald Trump. He's a hero's hero. He didn't have to, pardon me, but he did. He was a man of his word, and I will always respect someone who can keep their word. And I just want to encourage him that, he needs to finish strong. This is his last 4 years, and he needs to leave a mark.
Well, not according to him. He's going to, extend his own presidency.
It's, what could you do mine? And hair has been part of what I do to provide for my children. And so I've been, breeding for over 20 years, and
it added to the backlash too. I mean, you saw the memes of all the different hairstyles that people saw as you culturally appropriating, that of Black women and how we wear our hair. Again, 6 years later, because I don't want to just belabor every bad thing that's happened, but now in your life, you can get a job, but the things that you're qualified to do based on your studies and how you.
So she can't teach African studies because she's white. She's not allowed.
For what's right in this nation, and you can't miss it with pro-life. Life is what's going to keep this nation going. And if America doesn't preserve life, we won't have an America. This is an all-American president who has marketed making America first. America can't be first without life. Our generations is what's going to make America first, and the way we preserve them with the laws that we put in to protect them, so that America.
She doesn't understand overpopulation. Like, she doesn't understand the problems in China, right? Like, because it's always about like China this and China. Well, we want to trade with China, but they don't talk about overpopulation and how that's an actual problem, right? Like these countries who regulate how many kids you're allowed to have. They have that for a reason, right? Because they are experiencing a population crisis. And when we experience a population crisis, right, we're like, move out the migrants, right? But they're not like, how many kids are our people having, right? Is that not an issue of economics? With like how many people you have on a specific landmass, right? But they don't want to hear it. They're like, no. He said, be fruitful and multiply. It's in the Bible.
Stay first. That's the difference between us and the other guys. So I want President Trump to finish strong. I want him to go out with a bang. I want him to be the...
Cher says, the last thing we need is to fill the country with more unwanted children. No, I mean, yeah, wanted or unwanted. I mean, we just don't... I mean, people are having enough kids. We don't need to... try to push people who are not sure about having kids into having kids. That just doesn't make any kind of sense. It's not productive.
Pro-life president to ever walk the face of this earth. I want him to leave policies that will make Reagan look crazy. He needs to blow Reagan.
What? Like, what are you...
Beyond, you can't really get the employment you think you deserve, right? Is that the best way to explain it?
So, I started with applying for all the things I was qualified for, and after interviews and getting turned
It's funny because she told her she wasn't qualified, and then she was like, well, I was qualified, they just wouldn't give me the job.
down, I even applied to jobs that didn't even require degrees, being a maid at a hotel, working at a casino.
She's like, I have that degree, but, I tried applying for lower, more menial jobs, and they were like, nope, I recognize you from the internet.
So you're saying I wasn't able to get any of those jobs either. You couldn't get a job as a maid at a hotel because of...
Today I'm going to show you how to search for almost anyone with just their name.
Out of the water. Okay, and it's just the truth. I need him to serve God with the fullness of his heart because he was called to do so. God did not spare him from getting killed for him to do mediocre things. He spared him for great things, okay? As far as the pro-life group, I want you guys, the pro-lifers, to start coming together.
And spare him from getting killed. I'm sorry, I just can't with that.
We have to band together. We have to be, the new
You are
Goliath.
banded together. How are you not a collective of pro-life people? Like, how is that not?
I don't even want to say
banded
Goliath. I
together?
wish there was like a Christian giant I could compare us to. We've got to be like the Solomons and the Davids and like the Israel kingdom. We have to band.
This is one of those issues where I think you actually do have the majority, but we've ruled that the majority is incorrect. So we're like, no, majority doesn't always rule, because just because you think that you should have control over another person's options and bodily autonomy doesn't mean that you're correct, right? Like, you don't have legitimate backing for your claims.
Together And we have to unite and start being there for each other on a grander level than we've ever been before, because we really are the representation of Christ in this earth. And for everyone watching, you know, if I could advise anybody one thing, I say this. Through all the things that I've been through.
Was Christ blocking abortion clinics?
Through all the challenges. When the dust
Is
settled,
that what Jesus would have spent his time doing?
God was still there. Serve God. If you can't get nothing out of my story, you don't have to be an activist like I am. You don't have to be radical like I am. God puts us in different positions. Some are behind scenes, some are in front, some are loud, some are quiet, but it all works out for his glory. But at the same time, if all of us can do one thing, put God first, because he's going to be there when everything else is gone. It's your faith that's going to keep you going in hard times and even in good times. Trust.
I promise you he's not.
That have followed you.
Yeah, and I think you know, overall, I didn't really hear a reason for, you know, people. A lot of times employers don't tell you, oh, we aren't hiring you because. Right. But I think when there's so much negativity on just a Google search, or Wikipedia is even inaccurate about your life story, and you have to direct people to, like, the only place that my true story lives is in my book, and you know, in full color, and so I think that
her book is called In Full Color, which could not be ironic enough.
You know, people aren't going to go seek out my book if they're just looking for an employee. So it's been tough for sure.
They're like, we just wanted your resume, not your whole life story, lady.
But I have not given up.
Well, listen, one of the things about you, you have been incredibly savvy, including being smart enough to hold that book up. Because I know selling that book is how you...
She's like, I'm selling the books, I'm doing braids, give me money.
God. It's so beautiful. And so such a needed message for everybody. If we all did that, how everything would change. I want to ask you too, you said you want President Trump to blow Reagan out of the water in terms of making America great. I mean, that's what you said, his marketing, his slogan. And I think the pardoning of you and the Pearly prisoners was such an incredible, wonderful thing. You know, everyone was cheering, like, he did it, he did it. Right. And there have been a few more executive orders since, you know, Mexico City policy. There were 2 Biden pro-abortion orders that were rescinded to basically try to stop the federal government from funding abortion overseas and promoting it internally. Planned Parenthood's still getting a ton of money through Medicaid right now.
Cher asks, what does Christianity have to do with abortion? Does the Bible talk about it? So there actually is a passage, I can't recall where it is, but somewhere in the Bible that they actually do prescribe abortion. And they talk about women doing this. And so it was done throughout history. They had like various like herbal methods of aborting children for various reasons. So, like what she was saying earlier, the pro-lifers base their belief off of this interpretation of scripture that says that every person is created in the image of God, right? And so they're all important because they're all one of God's children. The Bible doesn't explicitly state that. It's kind of like a random interpretation off some random passages that basically says that God loves everyone. And so they're like, oh, well, you can't kill these babies because they're God's babies. They're not your babies.
Abortion's still totally permissible federally. There's no federal laws against abortion. And then the abortion pill, you know, the FDA has lifted the regulations under Biden, and so they're still lifted, where the abortion pill is just being shipped everywhere, freely sold everywhere. It's in, you know, Texas bans abortion. It's still being sold in...
That's not true. And even in California, there's a lot of businesses that are either not carrying the morning after pill, or they have it literally hidden. So it's not like in plain sight. You have to go and ask a customer service person for it.
Texas. So there's all of these opportunities to protect life. Do you have any specific things that you would love? I know your first message is you're so grateful that President Trump pardoned you. Now with your freedom, raising your voice, what would be your message? Is there anything specific that you would want President Trump to do?
I want him to influence.
Pay your bills. You got the hair. You've done some other things on the side to try to take care of you and your boys. I'm curious about how do you end up, you know, getting out of this. You legally changed your name in 2016 to Nkechi Diallo. Is that so that when you apply for a job, they don't say, oh, Rachel Dolezal, they see the name Nkechi Diallo?
Yes, and in fact, I was hopeful that with a new name, which, by the way, was given to me, I didn't actually choose that name myself, but that was something.
It's a Nigerian
She's like, I didn't choose that African name.
correct? It's Nigerian?
Right, yeah. So there was a gentleman from the Igbo tribe that reached out and said, we see who you really are, and you're a gift from the gods, and Nkechi or Nkechinyere means a gift from God. And so I accepted, I put that as my legal name. I changed my name in 2016 because I really wanted to be seen for my qualifications when I applied for a job. And as it turns out, of course, when I show up for the interview, I'm still me. And so, people in Spokane, Washington, where I was living at the time,
Washington.
A lot of people knew my face.
In like a very liberal area. So those liberals push it out.
And so, I didn't move past that job interview stage. Thankfully, I was able to move to Tucson.
Oh, but now she's in Tucson, so doing better. Thank you, President Trump.
It's Congress to get Congress to touch and agree that life starts at conception. I feel like once
that is a so even if, and I don't think so, there's no, like, legalistically, you can't give an unborn person precedent. Like, you can't give an unborn person a legal right over the autonomy of the person who's already been born, right? And so this argument is already played out. Like, this person already exists. This person potentially exists, right? So the unborn person can't take precedent over the bodily autonomy of the person who has been born and already has rights by virtue of there being a living, like, person taking action, right? So there's no agency. The potential fetus doesn't have agency, right? Like, you're trying to give them agency that they don't have and advocate for them.
we can get that grasp on life starting at conception, and we can
It's
start
like
making
like the Britney Spears thing, like, they took all Britney's money and all that, right? Like, but she had agency, right? It would be like if Britney Spears was brain dead and all that had occurred, right? Then you would have something, but she wasn't brain dead, right? She was very, very dumb, like you are.
legislation based off of that. That's going to preserve the nation. That's going to preserve America. And that is going to change the paradigm of the way our country is going to go. We were headed in a catastrophic route. Like, we were really about to, this country was going to be over. If Kamala would have won, mind you, she ran on reproductive rights. She was doing abortions at her rallies. Like, she was running on abortion. She was running on murder.
She was doing abortions at her rallies? I highly doubt that. Was that...
Arizona in 2020, and I've revamped my resume. I'm looking forward to reapplying this fall for hopefully some teaching jobs. But yeah.
Well, it is a fascinating journey, and to your point, Rachel, you detail a lot of it in your book. We appreciate it. I know that you've had some experiences, as you told me, that have left you traumatized, and we don't want to contribute to that, but we do want to contribute to the conversation because it is fascinating. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Tamara. And I just encourage everyone to be exactly who you are. And in this time where there's so much polarization, we really need all hands on deck to continue the work of deinstitutionalizing racism.
Sure says, if you can sustain your whole life without your host, then you don't have life.
Online shopping is easy, but not always safe. Major retailers often list unsafe products on their platforms.
Well, no, it's just that first part. I mean, we're all leeching off of somebody, I guess, in theory, right? But in that first part where you literally, like, a fetus in development can't move. It can't feed itself. Like, even a young baby can't do that. But a fetus in development can't breathe independently. It can't do all those things, right, that it needs to gestate in order to do. So, but there's nothing that says that a woman can't get pregnant accidentally, right? You don't want to force her or, by other means. Right, so if you don't intend to have a baby, then you shouldn't have a baby. And there's no reason that we have to force people to have babies against their will. It just doesn't make sense. We don't have to do it, right? They just have some belief that this random belief that like every life is valuable, but it's also contradicted by the fact that, excuse me, that they're the same people who don't think that people who are born in other countries are valuable. They don't think that people who, excuse me, people who are raised in like poverty who end up, having more needs later, they don't think those lives are valuable, because at some point it's about the choices people make, right? Once they become grown, but they don't care about the circumstances that allow those people to come into society, right? Or that it could have been prevented. Okay, well, then they should have done that. But instead, they decide that they need more people to be born to evangelize to, right? To get the numbers up. And it's a very selfish motivation, right? Because in their eyes, they can say they saved a life. They don't want to say they created a shitty life, right? That could have been avoided. They're like, oh, well, I saved a life, and every person is redeemable, even if they had a shitty life. So I'm going to preserve life at all costs, which doesn't make sense. It's like dudes, during the big wars and all that, like when the medics are out there, they're deciding if they can save somebody. They're looking at like the quality of life, like ideally, like when people come back, they're like, okay, is this guy like, not going to be able to see? He's not going to have his reproductive organs or something like that. So there's like some other thing beyond just saving a life to be like, what is their life going to be like if I save them? But you can't predict that with an unborn child. You have no way of knowing. And if the parent is already having reservations about having the child, that's a telling factor that maybe that shouldn't occur. Right? But you want to force them to do it.
If that woman would have won, America was done. There would be no nation. So if he could just be as extremely opposite as she was and just push for Congress to acknowledge life at conception, it may be hard for our generation to swallow. But I'm telling you, this is for 10 years. This is for 15 years down the line as we start to make laws that always acknowledge life at conception.
% decline in the birth rate, which is insignificant, right? It's tiny. But there is no issue really with reproduction in the United States.
Period. But it will preserve it in a good way. So that would be my request to him. I see that there's some bills coming out about that, and I want him to sign them. I want him to sign those life bills. I want him to be brave enough to decide, you know what, whether a child was born in rape or not, it's still a life. I think, what's that guy, 700 Club guy?
It's not about the child, though. And I don't care about Pat Robertson, whatever his fucking name is. I mean, it's about the child, right? It was never about your feeling, and that's the problem, right? Because you're making it about you.
Robinson, what's that guy from 700 Club?
Pat Robinson?
Yeah, he was a rape baby.
Yeah.
Look at him.
So there's a lot of them that speak out. Ryan Baumgartner, Rebecca Kiesling, yeah.
I think
Incredible
Fred
stories.
Hammond was about to be aborted. Listen, Satan wants to kill some of the greatest things coming into this nation. This is nothing new. You got to remember Egypt. let the crocodiles eat the kids. And then King Herod, they were trying to stop Jesus from coming. So you know what he did? He sent his army to go and kill 2-year-olds. This issue of murder and sniping.
Is that what happened? I don't think that's what happened.
Out the glory that God wants to bring into this nation. It's nothing new. It's ancient. So yes, even if rape is the issue, it doesn't matter. That's still somebody's life. Even if incest is the issue, don't make the baby pay for our mistakes. We keep making our babies pay for our mistakes, and that's just not the American.
So it's the fault of the victim now? It's like we're making the victim pay and the victim's baby pay, but you're acting like it's the fault of the victim again. See, there's a term for that. It's escaping me.
Way. We started with life, liberty. That's what our nation started with. No other constitution starts with that. And guess what? All the other nations have changed their constitution.
What is she? She's like, oh yeah, and our constitution starts with life and liberty, and no other constitution starts with that.
Over time. We're the only country who's kept ours for 400 years and going. So we have to stick to that.
Is she for real with this fucking bullshit argument?
Life and liberty. So life needs to start.
You know, it's like 300 years, right? Like, no.
Conception, we need to sign bills that support that because it's going to save our nation down the line. So that's my request to the president.
Amen. Co-signed. Thank you, Bevelyn, for everything. We're going to get Ricky in here next with both of you. So we're going to keep talking. But I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for your courage and your voice and your faith. It inspires me. I'm sorry,
249 years. 249. Yeah. I knew it was less than 300. It's just supreme right there. It's like, oh, it's been like 400 years. She doesn't even know. She doesn't have a fucking clue.
I need gas money, but I don't get paid till next week. What should I do?
Don't even stress about it. Just download the
spiritual warfare that you saw while you were in prison.
Well, like when I would go to the abortion clinic, right, and we would go out and protest for a couple of hours, it was always a known fact. Like
she just asked about her experience in prison, and she's like, "Well, when I went to the abortion clinic, the thing that I'm in prison for, right? I'm just going to give you a description right now."
Please believe anybody that has ever protested in front of an abortion clinic will agree with me. When you're done, all you're going to need is food, a good shower, and sleep. You are like spiritually drained because there's just so much going on.
Spiritually drained. Because you've been out there accosting people all day. It's spiritually draining to be out there accosting people all day.
And that literally was prison. Every day, all day. People yelling, screaming, almost getting into fights, arguments.
And people are accosting you all day.
You can't have a normal conversation with people in prison. Like, you really have to pull.
It's like, bitch, you want to fight me? You want your hand slammed in a door?
Most conversations would be an argument or a fight or, people are highs, drugs everywhere,
Really, in prison, there's drugs everywhere.
Girl, there's more drugs.
Girl, let me tell you, there's more drugs in prison than on the streets. And it's true. I've heard this before. That is true.
Prison than on the street. Okay? People go to prison and get strung out, amongst other things. So my bunkie would get high in my cell. And it was nothing I could do about it because
I personally have never been to prison. Bevelyn has been to prison twice, so she has more experience.
That's herself too. Stealing. I mean, you got to be on point about everything. You can't leave your locker open because you might go and come back and it's gone. And if one person reports it to the lieutenant, they're gonna shake the whole unit down. And then if you have contraband, it gets taken away. And so let me tell you, I had
contraband. She's violating the rules again in prison. After she repeatedly got warned, don't do this, you're gonna go back to prison. And then she does it, she goes to prison, she's like, oh my God. And then she's in prison and she's still breaking the rules. And she's like, oh my God. And it's like, no. They literally told you what the consequences were and you did it anyway.
Man. Girl, they give you these mattresses that's this thick. Okay? Girl, I had 3. I was not about to do that. Okay, that's where I drew the line. When my spine started talking back to me when I wake up in the morning, I was like, okay, no, I'm going to have to make it happen. So, I mean, prison is it's nothing you can ever just sit and get comfortable with. It's concrete.
Yeah, my comfort was violated, right? I didn't have a big, soft fucking mattress like I do at home. Man, that bed sucked. So you know what I did? I got some other mattresses. I got snuck in so I could have some extra privileges. This woman suffers from being overly privileged, right?
It's stainless steel bed, stainless steel toilet. You have to use the bathroom in front of somebody. You have no privacy. We have separate.
Oh my God. And, all that could have been avoided if you had not blocked the entrance to a healthcare facility.
Places for showers, but it's only a curtain separating you from the entire unit. So you can be as comfortable as you can be, but I just could never be comfortable enough to be rested.
Mm-hmm. Were you able to connect to any of your fellow inmates? Like, did they want to talk to you? Did they want to know why you were there? Were there any relationships you were able to make? Or was it really just, as you said, going at it kind of all the time?
Don't nobody want to hear that, really. Like, honestly, and a lot of people, they don't want to be evangelized to. Like, if they're already in prison, they don't want to hear that shit, right? Unless they're already on the Jesus juice, like, they're not for it.
Right. So I will say that God gave me the ability to be a light in prison. I was seen as a mother figure to a lot of the women there, somebody that they could vent to, somebody that they can talk to when they needed help. I tried to help them, but unfortunately I was hindered a lot because of drug addiction. Like, I'm not going to give you support for you to go and blow it on drugs. You know what I mean? So I had to give more moral support and more verbal support than anything else.
Not a whole lot of conversion happening. No, yeah. And you can see that, like, the people whose, like, actual lives are on the line, like, not like what you're describing, but, people who have really been involved in, like, really bad upbringings and major crimes and stuff like that. Like, they're like, what do you got to offer me? And you're like, well, I was at this abortion clinic, and then I smashed this bitch's hand, and now my rights are being violated. They're like, oh, yeah, you're funny.
So the thing is, in prison, inmate.com works faster than Twitter. When word get out in prison, word gets out. People talk. And so what you're known for, your actions.
So you were on a dating website?
In prison. If you're a liar in prison, people going to know you're a liar. If you're a swindler, they're going to know you're a swindler. If you're a homosexual, they're going to know. Like, whatever you do, not only are people going to know it, but you're going to be labeled as what you are.
Oh, this is like where your jacket gets listed up.
So actions mean everything in prison. So for me, word would get out about my actions because I was known as the girl that pays her bills. Like, let me tell you how a bill is created. So in prison, commissary is cash. Whether food, cookies, cakes, all that stuff that you get at commissary, that's as good as cash in prison because that's what you survive on, right? So if, like, a girl works in the kitchen and it's burger day and I want her to bring me back an extra burger because, the portions are small, she might be like, all right, cool, that's going to be $5 worth of
She's just like talking about getting extra. She needs the extra burger. I'm just putting that out. Like,
so she'll write me a bill of the things she wants on commissary, and I would then purchase them and give them to her. And that was my way of paying her back for what she did for me. So it's a lot of bills. Like, commissary day will be on for me was Wednesdays and Tuesdays. By that day, people are collecting up bills, and I was known for paying.
Yeah, of course. Like, I couldn't stay away from an abortion clinic for fucking 2 months while I was on trial, right? Like, whatever it was. Like, she's already on trial. She's got the injunction against her. It's just like, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to, like, up the ante. I'm going to assault somebody. Okay, cool. And now she's in prison and she's like, oh, and I'm over here buying extra burgers with my commissary, like.
Bills. I was known for being a woman of my word. If I said I was going to.
You're so oppressive. She didn't lose fucking 5 pounds,
Buy your book. Which buying a book means, like, I get $90 a week to spend on my name on commissary. If I needed more than $90, I would put another $90 on someone else's books. Have my husband put it on.
It's $5 for a burger and $90 for a book. That sounds kind of Orwellian.
And then I would spend $70 worth of commissary, and then that person would spend $20. And usually I would get people that don't have family support, that don't have people from the outside to help them. So I became known for my actions as an honorable woman, a stand-up woman.
You were honorable because you were buying burgers from the less fortunate?
They didn't really want to hear me.
You realize, they probably went without food? They probably, gave you their food to get your $5 in commissary?
They wanted to see my walk. And my walk made them more comfortable to come and talk to me about the Lord. And, they would hear while I was there. So then they would, inquire me and see how I was moving. And then they'd be like, let me go talk to her. Like, oh, are you really here because you were preaching? Like, you were Christian? And they're like, oh, man, I need to talk to you. And they would tell me, I'm going through this.
You weren't there for preaching. You were there for physically blocking the entrance to a healthcare facility and smashing the hands of one of the workers in the door. She's for a barter system. Yeah, in prison. That's the way it works.
Can you pray for me? And that's how that open door came about. My bunkie that was smoking at the time, she stopped. and she did give her life to Christ.
Wow.
That's one person I know for sure who lived with.
She quit smoking and she gave her life to Christ. She's not here to give her testimony, but she converted her cellmate who was like, "Shut the fuck up! I don't want to hear your shit
Because
anymore."
I would just minister to her all the time. We would be on lockdown, and I would just, listen. I listened a lot. So by me being a listening ear to these women, I was able to be a woman of counsel. When she would get upset about something and she would come in and she's ready to fight or beat the girl up because she's mad, I'd be like, listen, you can't just put your hands on everybody. You have to have a conversation. Go and talk to them.
You're in prison because you forcibly blocked an entrance, right? And then you're like, oh, but you can't put your hands on other people when you're mad. Oh no, just shut the door on their hands. That's how you do it.
Well, I was going to do, she asked me to do her toenails. Now I'm not doing them. I said, no, now you are going to do them because you're a Christian and we're supposed to bless our enemy. So now you're going to do them. You're going to do the best toenails she's ever
I'm
had
gonna wash my feet like Jesus.
in her life. Right? So I would teach her like principles like that and she would listen. And so the ministry was thick in prison. It was a lot of ministry.
Bit Bible, the app that makes you read one Bible verse every time you turn on your lock screen.
The ministry was thick.
Let's look at the
thick in prison. It was a lot of ministry.
Gosh.
Oh gosh.
What Satan means for evil, God
Allie Beth, just give us some of that white girl energy.
always uses for good in the life of the believer. Can you tell me about what your prayers were like while you were there? Because even while God was redeeming that
What
time
were you praying about while you were locked up?
that you spent there, I am sure you spent many, many hours just wanting to be home, to be with your baby, to be with your husband. So what were you praying when you were laying at night on your 3 mattresses?
Oh, man.
On your 3 mattresses. You stuck up bitch. Some people only have one.
A lot of nights I would just pray for peace. Like the first 3 weeks, I would wake up in shock. Like my heart would be beating out of my chest. I would just be like, it would hit me like, oh my God, like you're really in federal prison. It's so humbling. Like you're stripped and you're.
It's like, was I really in prison? Because they warned me that I was going to go to prison. Like 4 years ago, they were like, if you don't stop it, you're going to go to prison. And then I did it again. And then they were like, if you don't stop it, you're going to go to prison. And then when they actually sent me to prison, I was shocked. I was like, holy shit, am I actually in prison?
At the lowest. I mean, after prison, what is there? Death. Like, those only 2
Is that jails, institutions, and death? Or you go with like the AA fucking line of reasoning?
you can go to on this earth. So a lot of waking
Like,
up
I'd rather be dead than in prison.
in shock and asking God for peace. I never in my mind thought that he would leave me nor forsake me. I trusted him and I knew, I know God enough to know he's a good God and he keeps his promises. So that wasn't the issue.
Yeah.
It was just the hurt, the anguish, the loneliness, missing my daughter. I was praying for like God to protect her from my absence.
Yeah.
That she wouldn't be so grieved.
I was praying that she wouldn't be hurt by me being gone, because what hurt was me being gone. Like, you're not actually thinking about your kid at that point, right? Like, you're still thinking about yourself. You're just projecting your feelings onto your child.
So grievous about it. So a lot of peace, a lot of protection, a lot of prayers of shalom. And I knew it was an assignment. So I said, Lord, I want to be able to not focus on my own personal issues and get to the assignment with these girls in here, because these girls in here are lost.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I say the harvest is plenty, but the workers are few, you had Christians even on the compound that were like working there, but they weren't strong Christians. They were very judgmental to the girls. They were very
Compounds? Are you talking about the prison?
condemning of the girls and telling them, oh, you know, you're a sinner, you're a sinner. And my concept was like, no, listen. Yeah, we were all born in sin. That's why we have to be born.
It doesn't sound like she's talking about the prison. It sounds like she's talking about like a Christian compound here.
But we don't have to be stuck in sin. Jesus didn't die for us to keep crucifying him with constant sinning. Like we were birthed in the flesh, but now we have to be birthed of the spirit. And so a lot of like the way I would teach and the way I would talk to these girls, it was literally the same things they would say about Jesus. They was like,
according to their thing, Jesus died, right, because he was supposed to abolish all sin. Like, all sin was supposed to be forgiven when Jesus was crucified, right? So it has nothing to do with crucifying him again. You're allowed to sin, but you have to be redeemed in his name or some shit like that, right? Like, so it has, you're not hurting God. You can't be hurting God, right? Like, that's outside of the realm of possibility in the Christian worldview. Nothing you do can actually hurt God. And everything you do has already been forgiven by the act of sacrifice of Jesus.
Like, I've never heard anybody talk like that before. Many of them would be like, I never really met a Christian before. Like, you're not like, I wasn't stuck up or hard to talk to or so holy art thou. Like, they would come and talk to me, and I mean, they're dropping F-bombs in every sentence. And I still was like, able to sit and listen to them and be like, oh, okay, all right, I understand. All right, and my mom did this to me. My mom did that. You know, my bunkie, she was a prostitute. She was 13 years old. 13. And so for me, I had to operate with complete compassion and patience.
I hear that Jesus loved the prostitute.
I couldn't be caught up on what's going on at home. So those prayers were prayers of peace, prayers of shalom, and also praying for the people in the prison.
And your daughter is how old? Is she 2 or 3? Two. My goodness. And you were sentenced to 3.5 years.
Yes.
So you were thinking that by the time you got out of prison, gosh, so much. I've got, 3 little girls myself all around that age. So life goes by so fast. You were
3 tiny little white girls.
thinking you're not going to be able to be
They never lived in the ghetto.
with her, hug her again until she's a kindergartner, going from a baby to a kindergartner.
I'm so privileged.
I'm sure that was heartbreaking to process.
I never processed it. I wouldn't allow myself.
Have you considered therapy?
I would never allow myself to agree or even touch and agree with the sentence that they gave me. And I would never allow myself to just be like, yeah, okay, this is it. I'm not going to be able to spend time with my daughter till she's 5. No, I wasn't accepting that. No. I knew that I was going home. I knew that God was going to deliver me from the situation. I didn't know.
Well, they were going to let you out with good behavior anyway. That's how prison works.
When, God forbid, I did my full time in prison, I would have still trusted God, that God had a better plan or had saw something better through it. Are there nights that I cried to God and was like upset with him? Absolutely. Paul says in his book, he says, I think it's in Romans, he says, or Corinthians, he says, sometimes I feel like, as apostles, we just laid on display for everybody to look at and mock and make fun of. And that's how I felt a lot of time in prison. I felt like, dang, man, like, I feel like I'm just laid on display.
Bacon double cheeseburgers in here.
To be made fun of, to be mocked. Like, I was mocked all the way up until the day I walked in that cell. I was, my life just laid on display to just be here.
Did you have...
It's an example of what happens when you serve God. Like taunting, mockery. And I just felt like, no, God, this can't be it. This can't be the finisher. I just knew that this couldn't be the end of the story because, God does not like to be mocked. When he says, touch not my anointed, so I'm like, something has to come from this. So, no, I never accepted that I would be out and not be with my daughter until she was 5. No, never.
والله العظيم يا ابن أختي، والله العظيم حق بنات ما عاد وما بيحتاج مشلول صار له ما لي مقطوعة ما صغر ما لي حد ما لي غير الله والله يفرج خيرك الله ما يشرح.
شلون عم تدبروا اموركم هون؟ شلون عم
والله هالعالم اتحن عليه. شحذ راي تربيتها جابت لي قرصين بندول وشحذت حبتين بطاط لحظة طبختها ما تقول خالتي كذابة شايفنا
لا محشومة يا خالتي محشومة
لا حد اجتهد ناكل
John or Corinthians? I don't know. I don't know the fuck about it. What verse are we talking about?
Quick pause to tell you about our first sponsor for the day, and that is America's Christian Credit Union. America's for the benefit of their congregants, and now they have thousands.
Union? That's crazy. It's unbelievable.
branches nationwide, and they will be a bank that can partner with you and partner with your shared values. And
wasn't Jesus against the moneylenders?
Right now, they will donate a box of Every Life diapers to a Christian Pregnancy Resource Center for every new member who opens a checking account before January 31st. So that just tells you a lot about who they are and what they believe. They will also pay you a $100 bonus to your new account when you open your checking account. All you have to do is use promo code Allie when you sign up. Go to americaschristiancu.com/Allie. America's Christian Credit Union is federally insured by the NCUA. Use promo code Allie when you apply.
That's Paul.
And
Paul was a bastard. Everybody says Paul was a bastard. So if you're talking about that, that was Paul. Yeah, he sucked.
Tell me what the moment was like when you heard that you had been pardoned. Did you get a phone call? What happened?
So I actually watched this happen in the TV room. So, okay, usually when you have people that have been, I was locked up with people that got like 15 years, 30 years, 20 years, 50 years, like people who doing bids. So it's called being institutionalized. When you get in prison that long, you start to kind of claim things as your own. Like this table is my table, that TV is my TV. So
because they literally fucking live there. You don't get that.
And so like you kind of start to personalize things in the prison because you're there for a long time. And so the TV room was this girl's name. It's a nickname, Flocka. She was my neighbor. It was her room. And so I woke up. I think they pop our locks. We locked down at 9:30 at night. They pop our locks at 6. So when
Flocka,
I heard them pop the
someone you don't want to fuck with.
lock, I just was like, no, let me go run and put my chair in the TV room. If you put your chair in wherever you put your chair, it's yours. So I put my chair in the TV room by the TV I wanted to use, and I was like, listen, I don't care.
Prison stories from Beverly.
How much Flocka want to watch her show today? It's quiet. I'm watching the news. Okay. Then I got back in bed, went to sleep, got up again. It was a very peaceful day. It was a weekday. It was a Thursday. Usually on weekdays, you gotta be
putting more detail into this one. You know, she didn't have as much detail the last time she told this story, so she had to like really. She was like, it was a weekday. It was a day that ended in Y.
Dressed in room, spotless bed made by 7:30 in the morning every day, or you can get in trouble. So it was so crazy because on this particular Thursday, people were sleeping in. It was very quiet. It was very still. It felt like a weekend. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, dang, like. I get up and I'm about to go hop in the shower and I'm contemplating, do I want to put on my uniform or do I want to wear my grays, which you can only really wear at the end of the day and on the weekends. And I just felt like this whisper, like, you're going home today. And the thing is, it was so hard for me to receive the whisper.
Like she didn't know. She didn't know what day it was.
Because
she didn't know it was coming.
I had experienced.
Because she had donated like all this money to the Trump Foundation or whatever.
Every prayer being answered with a no. So I had gotten used to like not even getting my hopes up about anything because it seemed like I was getting like crash and burn. I mean, almost, I'm gonna tell you, on the 20th, so I was locked up with 2 J6ers and one of them stayed in my unit. Her name was Audrey. Me and her were very close.
She was locked up with the January 6th people who were about to get pardoned too.
You know, us pro-lifers and J6ers, we stuck together in prison because we were like the only few people that felt like we came from some type of similar cloth. You know what I mean? It was hard to vibe with somebody when you know like you're there because you're really innocent and they're there because they're guilty. Even if they've had a change of heart. It's like, it's different. So I was expecting when the J6ers went home that the pro-lifers would go home too. So when I woke up that morning on the 21st and Audrey was gone.
Of course you were. You were fully anticipating this guy was going to come into office and do what he did, right? Which is the only reason you actually turn yourself in because you're like, oh, I'm going to do like 3 months. Like, who gives a fuck, right? I'm just going to keep doing shit that they told me not to do in 2020. I'm going to keep doing it for like another 4 years. Because I know this ruthless, cutthroat, fucking, administration isn't actually going to do shit, right? They're not actually. And then when they actually put you in prison for like 3 months, and then your president gets elected, and you're like, oh, boom, pardon. Like, really? You expect people to believe that you didn't, like, foreshadow any of that?
And I wasn't there. I was devastated. So this was here again, another prayer I'm thinking is not being answered or answered with the no. I didn't leave on the 20th like her. I'm stuck here in this prison. So now I'm like, oh my God, am I really stuck here? Am I really left here? And so now this is why the 23rd was so important for me to get up.
People can't fucking be stupid and have foresight. It doesn't work that way. Like, you're either a stupid person who believes that your sky daddy is making the rules, right? And that he wants the planet to become overpopulated. Because the end is coming. He wants as many people to be here to be following him when he burns the place down, right? Because that makes so much sense, right? But your present position is just like keep them all. Yeah.
As I whisper, and I just kind of dusted off. I didn't say no to it, but I didn't really be like, okay, sorry, yeah, I'm going home. I didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So then I took a shower, put on my grays, went into the TV room, cut on the news, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna chill in here, and I'm gonna just watch the news. I don't care. I'm just gonna watch the news. And it was very hard for me on the 21st and the 22nd to watch the news because the J6s had left and I was still there.
Right.
So it was really hard for me. But anyway, so I'm watching the news, and all I'm seeing is like World Economic Forum go on, him addressing them, and then I'm watching some things about ICE in Boston and how he's kind of clearing out, the illegal immigrants and stuff like that.
Oh, she touched up her wording here. She was like, oh yeah, no, I don't want to like demonize those people too much. Like, Tori's like, oh, he's getting rid of them immigrants, No, she didn't do that this time. She's like, oh, well, I don't know. I heard that he might have been cleaning out some illegal immigrants. But they don't want birthright citizenship, right? They want to force people to have children, right, by blocking their access to abortions, and then say, oh no, these kids can't have citizenship because their mother was born in the wrong country. Sorry. And then like do child separation, which she's also against if it's her family, but not somebody else's family. She doesn't care. They're like, okay, so we'll take none of that makes sense at all.
And so then I take a break. I call my husband, and my husband's like, babe, you're buzzing on Twitter. I'm like, really, what's going on? He's like, well, Charlie Kirk just retweeted, put your name in it. It's saying that pardons are coming out for y'all soon. They don't know how soon, but they were hoping it would be at least Friday. So he was expecting to come pick me up that morning, thinking that Trump...
This is something I've recently learned about prisons. Like, so now when you're in prison, included like in your commissary, you get tablet time, right? Like, you get messaging, you get time on the internet. Some of these guys have blogs and shit. It's kind of restricted as to what activity you can do, but they do have regular access to the internet if they have good behavior. Anybody who's incarcerated. So interesting to know.
Friday, and then I would get out.
Hey, Pixie, good to see you. Watching the news hurts me too. Yeah, it's a painful experience these days.
That day. Again, so we're like hoping like, man, maybe I could get out on Thursday. That would be even better today, but whatever. So I get off the phone with him and I go sit back down and watch the news. All I see on the screen is breaking news, Trump signing executive orders. So I'm like, all right, let me watch. Again, I'm not thinking that he's going to sign my release.
Mm-hmm.
I see him sign 2 executive orders about 2 things that I forgot now because, that happened. And the next thing I know, I hear, okay, then we're going to sign this executive order to pardon the pro-lifers who've been unjustly charged. And he said, how many of them? And the guy said 23. And he said, yeah.
They call them peaceful protesters, like word for word. That's what he said. And this chick, right, was actively blocking the entrance to an abortion clinic. She used her body to force the door closed on an employee's hand and pressed her body weight there after the employee said, "You're crushing my hand."
Never happened. And as I heard shouldn't have never happened, I'm like, wait, what? Oh, I'm like freaking out. I'm like, whoa, oh my God, wait, he's about to sign it right now? Girl, he grabbed that pen and I heard, I was screaming. Girl, I ran through the whole pod. I'm speaking in tongues. I'm praising. I'm going, thank you, Jesus. I'm going bananas. And believe it or not, the inmates didn't get jealous. They started applauding me.
Aww.
They started cheering. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm going home.
They like to see people get released. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they got your back.
I told my husband, babe, come get me. Come get me. Excuse me.
That's okay.
Excuse me, I'm coming up from a cold. I was like, babe, come get me now.
I got a cold.
Come, pack the car, come get me now. I should be out in a couple of hours. And
that was that. History was made right there.
The police who arrested him are talking about the sudden death of Robert Fisher in prison. We broke that news last night. Fisher is the 34-year-old man police called a monster. He raped, murdered, and then tried to cover up what he did to little Josephina Cunningham.
She was just 3 years old. New at 6 now, one of the officers who worked closely on this case tells us about his conversation with Josephina's father shortly after finding out Robert Fisher is dead. Let's go to Tessa Bentulin live here right now in the studio with us. Tessa, good evening.
Hi, good evening, Sabrina and Mark. I had the chance to interview Detective Sergeant Michael Diso with Rensselaer Police. He says Josephina's father wants to move on. Diso says Fisher's death makes the father relive that terrible attack on his young daughter. Josephina died in July 2023 in Rensselaer at the hands of Fisher. This is Josephina on your screen. Fisher is accused of raping her while she was alive and awake. Fisher just began a 20 years to life in prison sentence. He was serving his time at Elmira Correctional Facility. Detective Sergeant Diso was one of the first handful of officers that responded the day Josephina died. He's had many conversations with Josephina's father. And what was that?
Reasons for carrying out this way. Again, because I don't know. I just thought eventually they'd let us back in, and they've denied us, I think, 3 times now. It's been a year, over a year. The last time I applied was October 22nd. It's ridiculous. They still haven't gotten back to us. Now, so what I did was I wanted to create a free speech network. Now, I called it the Audacity Network because I wanted to say it's like we got the audacity to say these things, So I said the audacity, and that's just something I say a lot. I'm like, this bitch has the audacity, so I created the Audacity Network. And the thing is, my goal with this network is number 1 to be YouTube free.
Oh yeah, good night, Cher. I was watching this the other day when it was live. So, but yeah, it's been a great day, pleasant evening, and Happy New Year and all that.
Now, I know it's a little hypocritical because this is being streamed onto YouTube, and I do love YouTube, but there are certain topics that I'm not allowed to hit on YouTube, and I want to be able to do that on my platform. The challenge is we have operating expenses. I have a producer, an editor, and it's really helpful to get a yearly membership every single show. So it's $100. Well, if we get $100 membership every show, then we're sponsored for the entire year. Last show, if we get to 10 a show, we might not even have to do ads at some point. Now, what do you get in return? You're thinking, Pearl, why should I? And I see where you guys are coming from. I mean, how often do you support YouTubers? Who wants to download? We are in both app stores. You're thinking, Pearl, no. I work hard for my money. Totally fair. I want to give you guys things that I want to see in the future that I'd like to create if we get enough support. All of these things are expensive, but I want you guys to understand. Actually, I'm casting for these hoes. I'm not letting any mid
become follow the lawmaker when it comes to playing the stock market. Tonight we look at
spiritual warfare that you saw while you were in prison.
Almost getting into fights, arguments.
Trying to just sound the alarm about the violence that is actually going on inside these clinics. I mean, like you said, these prosecutors said that they were looking for violence. Well, the real violence is going on inside the clinics, not outside the clinics, but they're not concerned about that. So tell us a little bit about your story. How did you become so passionate about this cause?
Well, Governor Cuomo did it. Chris Cuomo, I was already doing ministry, but I was doing like homeless ministry, things like that. But Chris Cuomo decided that he would legalize abortion up to 9 months in New York. Mm-hmm. And when he did that, I was like, first of all, I felt ashamed of myself that I had not prioritized abortion before that, because it took for him to legalize it up to 9 months for me to realize, oh snap, this is murder. It been murder, but it hit me. Like, nah, y'all gonna really take a 9-month-old baby?
Really? Is that what most people are trying to do? No, that's not the way it works. But that's the way you guys try to paint it, right? And when they're making a point as such that a person who has not been born never has precedent over the person who's carrying them, right? Like, whatever the circumstances are, you have to side with the person who has to make the choice, not the person, right? That has not been born to make a choice. There's no education. There's no precedent for this person other than being completely subordinate to the person who's already born. And if people are lacking in a maternal instinct, I'd say that's probably a good sign that they should not be having children.
I straight out their mama won't kill them. That's too far. So from that moment on, I'm like, no, I'm going to hit them with everything we have. We're going to preach. We're going to pray in the spirit. We're going to go all out for the kingdom of God, because what they did was wicked. They lit up the Empire State Building pink.
Yep.
And they celebrated throwing papers all through. Do you remember that?
It hit me like a ton of bricks. So there's only one spirit. So obviously the spirit was working in the same way among a lot of us Christians in that moment. But keep going.
Right. You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what it was for us too. And I was just like, no, we're going to take action. I'm in New York City. I'm near the biggest abortion clinic really in the nation, takes up the most abortions. And it's Margaret Sanger Square Abortion Clinic. I'm going to come here every morning. I'm going to preach this gospel. I'm going to do what I know. I'm going to operate in the power of the Holy Ghost. And I'm going to be obedient to God. I did not care about how many babies were saved. I didn't care about how many women I talked to. All I knew is that I was going to be a witness. Now, the crazy thing is this. After I started going to the abortion clinic, like, I think I'm the type of person where I know how to suppress trauma, but then it pops back up out of nowhere. You understand what I'm saying? But I'm really good at like mentally suppressing trauma. I forgot about when I got my first abortion at 15. And I had forgot about how there were protesters out there screaming and yelling and picketing.
I completely forgot that ever happened.
And I went in and I got my abortion. But when I had remembered that, I was like, oh my God, you were always there. You were a witness, even when I didn't know it. You were witnessing for me. So that's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a witness for them girls who walk in. I'm going to give them the opportunity to have a second choice. And obviously, there's plenty of non-for-profit organizations and plenty of ways God can facilitate choosing a different choice. But I need to be that witness to let them know before you walk in here, this wasn't your only option. And that's what I was, period.
God, this is crazy. Crazy, crazy people in this crazy world.
Someone will come in and just start blaming the Jews for everything. Now, again, if that's your topic, I actually understand where they're coming from. I don't do that here, okay? I'm not here. What I'm here to is to talk about the things that are going on when it comes to dating, culture, and relationships. That's my niche. If it expands in the future, I'll consider that. But when you have, every other word is it's the Jews this, it's the Jews that, it's this, it just derails. It's like, I'll be like, okay, let's talk about modern dating. And they're like, it's all the Jews' fault. And I'm like, okay, well, that's really nice. You might be right. I don't know. But do you guys understand what I'm saying? Do you understand? If you guys are derailing the entire conversation, it's just not a productive chat. Like, okay.
It's called trolling. It's very effective.
The first is, they're saying it is though. Look, is that going to change in my lifetime? I don't sell I don't know who is, okay? All I know is the YouTube videos that have been produced by other people. Pearl, your topic is constantly expanding. Yeah, look, it could change in the future. I don't know. But I want to have a productive discussion about the topic at hand. And saying, the Jews did this, the Jews did that, it could be true. I don't know. At faith arguments. You can pay to troll if you want, but I do give Doug the discretion to moderate and kick people out.
Hundreds of thousands of people coming through our borders without us knowing who they are. I will provide you with a quote. What I said is that Ronald Reagan was a transformative political figure because he was able to get Democrats to vote against their economic interests to form a majority.
To maintain the promise of those words, the promise of our country and of our great history.
Like, he's stricter than Trump. Yes. I mean, it's a fascinating...
About this, former President Obama was dubbed deporter-in-chief. That's because he deported some 5.3 million illegals during his 2 terms.
Nobody's gonna know.
$0 delivery fee.
What?
The government are going to enforce the policy. Instead of us throwing a rebellion, voting is an alternative to a rebellion, right?
What? No, not necessarily.
Voting's
You're
not,
saying...
so you're saying voting is not an alternative?
But it's not
so,
just the only...
here's my question, Craig. No, let me run my line. Let me run my line, dude. Let me run my line.
Let's let him wrap his point, and if you can hold your thought, just...
They're basically trading their potential.
I was just going to say, just before you respond, rather than talk about more of like an overall broad analysis, I would, like I say, like to bring it into how Christianity would account or solve that specific thing, just so that we can get back to Christianity versus secular humanism.
So, yeah, that's fine. this is the thing. I think that the man being an extension of the church is the leader of the house, and the women being the neck of the head, the man being the having children, raising good people for the next women, following their nature and what they're good at is actually has them at home raising good people, keeping the homes and families flourishing, keeping communities flourishing. And the opposition to that is this egalitarian fantasy that Craig likes to push, which is everybody's equal, everyone's interchangeable, send the women into society, put them in debt, make believe that they're going to be the...
Okay, can I talk now? You've literally spoke for about 3 years.
Yeah, he's like, it's been Jim Bob this whole debate. The whole debate has been just...
Ryan, is it okay if I get like a minute and a half to respond?
Well, all right, but to be fair, I wasn't keeping track before, so if you're gonna ask me to keep track now, I gotta give him a full minute and a half after. So.
This guy's a fucking total troll.
So I'll give you a minute and a half.
Well, I mean, I was keeping track, and he literally spoke for about 2 minutes.
You need a tissue box?
No worries, no worries.
No,
all right, I'm just giving you the parameters. I'm giving you the parameters. That's how it's going to go down. So a minute and a half, and then I'll give a minute and a half to Jim Bob.
Well, okay, well, rather than doing that, Jim Bob, do you think you can give me a minute and a half without interrupting?
Absolutely.
Is that possible?
Absolutely. Yes, Craig.
Right, okay, right. We don't need you to time it then, Ryan, if that's okay. If Jim Bob is willing to let me speak for a while without interrupting, that's wonderful.
I will anyway.
So Jim Bob...
Right now.
Okay, right. So, Jim Bob holds a position that women just stay in the house and have babies because that needs to advance society. Well, I'm just going to quickly go over a list of groundbreaking discoveries and achievements by women across various fields, highlighting their invaluable contributions to science, technology, medicine, and society. Rosalind Franklin discovered a double helix structure of DNA through X-ray crystallography, which was crucial to Watson and Crick's work. Marie Curie discovered polonium and radium, leading to the development of radiation therapy for cancer. Barbara McClintock discovered jumping genes, transposable elements in genetics, earning her the Nobel Prize. Henrietta Lacks, her cells, taken without her knowledge, became the first immortal cell line, revolutionizing medical research. Gertrude B. Alien developed life-saving drugs for leukemia, organ transplants, and autoimmune diseases, earning a Nobel Prize in medicine. Florence Nightingale revolutionized modern nursing and hospital sanitation methods. Virginia Appiger created the Appiger score, a method to assess the health of newborns immediately after birth. Dorothy Crowfoot Hodgkin discovered the structures of important biochemical substances like penicillin, vitamin B12, and insulin. Got Alice Bell, got Rachel Carson, Astronomy in Space, Annie Jump Carson, Celine Payne Gapaschkin, Vera Rubin, Katherine Johnson, Jocelyn Bell, Physical Chemistry, Lisa Menz. Like basically, all of these amazing women and discoveries and advancements that they have created in society would never exist under Jim Bob's position. The women should stay in the house and have babies. Yeah, women can have babies, but they can also not have babies and advance society in the ways that these... I've actually got a list of 34 women. I didn't get to go through all of them. So, Jim Bob, your position would have meant none of this would have happened. Your position would have meant we don't have penicillin. How do you feel about that?
That was 2 minutes. So 2 minutes for you, Jim Bob, and you can cut off whenever you're ready.
Paperwork. That's right. Has nothing to do with truth. If justification is an essential ingredient for knowledge, and all of our justification has been defeated, this is a problem for the atheists who so desperately want to sling more they so desperately want to use. Now, all you atheists who are out there watching this, I know what response you want to give. You want to say that our moral intuitions are justified because true intuitions are more likely to help with survival. If you say this, I'm going to hit you with the hard counter. I'm going to smile and say that if that is really the case, well then we should all be theists. Belief in the supernatural is a widespread, innate metaphysical intuition held by humanity. I hope you can see the issue at play here. Humanity, as a species, has this widespread belief or intuition about the existence of God and the supernatural. So